Here we are looking at the 30 list, being the top 30 momentum companies on the ASX over the last quarter and the 30 best launchpad stocks, which have moved in the last week. Gary Glover's been through the list. He gets the list on a Thursday afternoon, so do members, and they come up with their requests. So we're going to go through the list to find the best opportunities, the trading lessons, and to find ideal setups. This week is kind of critical because it's about 1 month on from the market lows that we did see in April. The dramatic falls, the US tariffs, and a whole lot of concern around the globe came down V bottom and has rocketed up. And this also falls into something that Gary's talked about for many times. When the market has a washout like this, he's quite often looking for companies that are up near their highs and showing that relative strength, which is poignant for us to look at those momentum leaders. There's a lot on the table there, Gary. How are you this morning?
Yeah, very pertinent actually. As I was saying earlier, I've literally just gone through the 52-week list today. Ruled a quarter of them out, sort of circled a handful of names which I think look really constructive on a weekly, longer term basis, and then I've got a few other names there, but I do need to do a bit more work on that list. But yeah, there's plenty of companies there making 52-week highs, so some pretty healthy signs there. On our list there, Chris, I think in the quarterly list, there's quite a few interesting sort of charts in there. The launch pad there, probably a little thinner for me, just, I think that maybe a result of we're, 4.5 weeks in from the low here. So we've probably had the strongest names come out of the gates early, which they should. And then maybe we're getting some of the laggards there on this there, or maybe some smaller names as well, which may be a bit harder to trade there. But yeah, been a pretty nice period, if I'm to be honest here, actually. So I'm sure everyone's relieved to see the market bounce as strong as it has. But personally, it's been probably been one of the best months for me personally for quite a while. So nice and rewarding.
That's very positive to hear, and a lot of our followers are momentum traders. So hopefully they're in a similar boat to you, where it's sort of all that hard work and diligence is paid off, and you've been able to ride the tailwinds. We'll take some lessons as you're talking about 52-week highs. We'll see a lot of these smaller companies really shoot the lights out, and some other ones within the list. DTR is the first one you've got on screen here.
Yeah.
This one, obviously, it's at 52-week high, massive volume into the movement, explosive movement, looking at sort of 4, 5, 6, 7-fold returns.
Yeah.
What are we learning on this one?
Look, it's a little small there, so I'll just feature this one here. Apart from being number one there, it's too small for me, but it has had a pretty strong burst there impulsively on pretty strong volume. So to me, if I didn't mind trading small ones, I would be watching this one here. So you would want to now sort of see this go through a bit of a consolidation phase and not sort of see too much volume on the sell down. So that would just be a bit of a watch there, as would WA8, again, another sort of small one there. There was a little bit of a cup and handle in here, Chris. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it sort of stayed on the last high there.
Yeah,
nice. Yeah, and there wasn't too much volume in there too. That was probably the thing. You're sort of pretty reasonably helpful, reasonably sort of positive volume profile up and back up to the high, then a bit of a congestion there. And then you're coming out here. I think the breakout day was on good volume. So that's a good sign as well.
And as you talk about volume on this one, you've talked about relative strength, and you were talking about it at the time, sort of a month ago. How important is the relative strength for this one, showing a higher low? It's got the washout day. We can see the wick coming down there on the 7th of April.
Yeah.
Very low volume relative to the market volatility. So how important is that kind of setup for a market leader and to get a run like this?
Yeah, no, that's good there. I mean, look, I know it sort of did break that 20 there, but you're often sort of looking to see how they travel around those key moving averages. So whether it's the 10 or 20, so I think that's a pretty good sign there. And obviously now we're hugging the 10. That's getting really aggressive here. So, Kalamagi was trading this one here. We're looking at that 10-day moving average. That'd be his. You wouldn't want to see a break there, but that volume profile is still pretty robust there. So nothing too negative yet with that one. So I think this was, so it's pretty interesting here, volume coming off this low here. So when I see big volume like that always catches my attention there, because that's sort of, when you look back at past and see the stocks that have actually had a pretty strong run, they usually start with with a big accumulation phase sort of early there. So you're definitely going to watch those sort of bigger volume lines there. I think NMR number 4 as well. Again, too small for me personally, but all that volume profile is pretty strong. So again, we know when we look back, those sort of momentum stocks that do tend to run on have a really good volume profile like that. So again, it's sort of small here. So I mean, if anything, I mean, it's gone from like 4 cents then to 8 cents and then to 12 and then to 18. So in theory, it's getting more and more expensive as it goes up quite substantially. So the volume probably should taper off. So it's not. So in fact, even though the volume's actually been growing here. So yeah, so that's definitely another one to just those sort of small ones to keep an eye on there. VTM was another one that has broken out. Some reasonable volume on this bracket. Again, a bit small here, but it was. I mean, that's had a pretty good run here. This thing's this thing sort of tightened up in here and started to break out there. So definitely had a big sort of, whether you call it cup and handle here or just, just kind of like a little VCP breakout in here. Yeah, some good signs there. I mean, the tiny little B wave break here. Definitely a stock showing relative strength going sideways in a pretty bearish market. So that's a good sign. VTM coming through here as well as a secondary good sign, but seeing some good volume here. So again, this is another one just to watch here so far. Not seeing any too negative signs there. So yeah, got to watch those sort of stocks that have shown up pretty strong in a bear market and then gone on here. BOE's been pretty good. I mean, I think uranium's been pretty strong. We talked about uranium the last 3 or 4 weeks there, so I won't go on it too much there, but had a pretty impulsive move here. It's had a pretty solid move here. So they're probably due for some congestion. They don't always congest. They can kick on there, but it'd be nice to sort of see something like this, or like a little congestion phase or something, or even like a little tight. So just look at how these things trade in the past there. It tends to be more of a stepping, step up fast and congest and step up fast and congest. So even in here, we had like a little tight congestion, even though it was really only a 3-wave rally here. So at some point, they were probably going to get a little congestion phase here. So yeah, but pretty good signs there. It's the volume there, pretty strong as well. So yeah, again, that would go on a watch list for me as well, just because that's been an obvious leader out of the low, been one of the strongest sectors there. I think we're shown there that, natural gas, I think some of those energy names, nickel, gold, zinc, still pretty robust in across those sort of sectors there, Chris, as well. So ZEO was sort of one. This must be in that, is it vanadium, is it? Like that one of the sort of names. No, but that's had a pretty strong burst there. Again, it's a smaller name here, but again, the volume profile is pretty robust as well. So just keep an eye on some of those smaller names there. For some of them got some pretty interesting profiles. You just need to sort of go through a little bit of a congestion here, that's all. So that looked interesting to me.
KLN, which is rare earths, right? I'm not logged into the other portals at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think BDG was one that's been pretty decent now. It's a bit of a VCP there. The only thing with that one there is that is a gold company there. So, it's kind of lagging this current move here. So
that's a VCP.
Yeah, it was a VCP. They have pretty light volume there. So it does look good technically. Just kind of wonder why it's not on fire like the rest of the sector there. FCL was sort of one that was that I've sort of followed there. It's not the most liquid stock here, but that had that really impulsive move and had a congestion phase. So this lasted a bit longer than I thought it would. And it sort of built there. It had a bit of a throwback as well, but it has sort of gone on with it. That's the beauty of actually sometimes looking at here. You can see that a weekly nice impulsive and then corrective there kind of built there. So it did look like it to me, like it could go back to, I think once it sort of broke out here, I did sort of move some of I think I left one of the targets where I originally had it, and then I moved my other target up to just under here, because I thought that would be a probably obvious level of resistance there. But that's now had a pretty good run here, so it's probably just got to watch that. Maybe it'll congest here under the high, maybe set up a larger cup and handle there. You want to sort of see that potentially congest there. I think AUE, I thought there was a little bit of a cup and handle in there, a little bit gappy, so a bit hard to trade that one. And SHG, thought this is interesting there because there was sort of, again, a pretty impulsive move, gone sort of sideways there. Yeah, you can argue your sort of ABC here. That might have had the chance to rally there, but end up sort of being coming back here. But there wasn't really any aggressive selling in there, Chris. And then you saw some pretty reasonable volume come off that low there. Then it sort of built here and gone straight through here. So you kind of got a B-weight break here around that 25, 26 mark. We've seen some pretty good volume, and then it's just tightened up here, nice and tight here. That's a pretty good, that's a nice little setup here now. We've sort of come out again here. So this is still looks pretty robust to me. So, yeah, that looks okay. I think MMA thought looked okay. Sorry. Potentially VCP maybe tightening up again. The only negative,
A couple of days.
yeah, the only negative with that is it's, see how it's been pretty tight in here? Now it's getting a bit looser. That's the only thing. Sometimes when you want to sort of see the correction. I know McLaren used to always talk about corrections being uniform, sort of like being similar size. Once they start getting a lot larger, then that can be like an overbalance there. The only good thing with an overbalance is like this, if they normally do go to a new high, but then just got to be careful they don't just sort of stop there. But that's the only. Overall looks pretty good. I think Drone Shield's a bit of a watch for me. I like definitely showing some sort of strength there, but probably wants to sort of congest a bit more. Deep yellow, again, just pretty big volumes. Good impulsive rally here. Just love to see a bit of a pause there. That's mainly it there, Chris, from the quarterly list. Yeah.
You've covered most of them, but there are 2 extra requests from members. So one was KCN. And if you have a look at that chart.
KCN's okay there. Has been a bit of a laggard there, KCN. So, yeah.
So the theme's been running for a while, and it made a false break in the April low washout with the market when the rest of its sister companies and the thematic was running hot, right? So,
yeah. Just been sort of lighter volume all the way through here, not signs of accumulation there. And I noticed that the volume's kind of risen into the high as well. Like that's kind of almost, like we've had our peak volume into that high there yesterday. So it's almost like that can be a sign of distribution when you sort of see that move there. So, again, look, it'd be a bit of a watch there when I sort of see it congest there, do some sort of little high tight flag type of thing. Go, just pull back here. Very light selling. That's what you want to see. Pull back, light selling, whole thing tighten up again. That might be a case, but it's dangerous here right now, I think. And that sort of distribution there, that when they build up like that, show the highest volume, at these spot, sort of spiky sort of highs there. That's just, you got to be cautious about that as well. To me, if I saw that, I'd be taking some off, so. What was the other one?
You talk about consolidations, and HZR has a little consolidation, not right now, but it has come out of it. So there was that little lag part you're talking about.
Yeah, I did sort of circle this one as well, actually. But it did have a nice little pop, then a nice little tight congestion there. But then it kind of gapped up a little bit as well. So see how it's, not bad volume here. Showing a bit of strength, getting back up near the high there, a little bit under. The whole thing tightens up here. No, all that 1, 2, 3, and there's just no selling there at all. That's a good sign when you see like 3 days like that under the high. That's exactly what David Ryan would be looking for, something like that, and then it pops again. Again, a bit small for me, but yeah, so it has gone to a new high here now. But yes, it still looks okay. That volume actually, that's probably the striking thing there was those 3 days there. Is that's had good volume there. What you don't want to see is it goes sort of medium, larger. You actually want to see that larger, and then you want to sort of see it maybe congest and cool here, maybe go again. So yeah, have that pop and then maybe congest and then go again. But probably just need to watch that there because it has gone to a new high here.
Well, so that's a quarterly momentum, and we did have some requests, sort of touching on what you talked about before, uranium, but that's kind of a good segue into the launchpad leaders.
Yeah.
Something, a preferred measure that Gary and I look at, and we're talking about before air, is some other ways we look at the launchpad and sort of smooth out what's happening to identify leading themes. I'll talk about uranium because the last couple of weeks it has been showing up along with rare earths. We did a video for members earlier in the week on that one. But uranium has been ticking up, and there's no surprise. BOE's on the momentum list, so's Deep Yellow. And how we see them at the moment is that I think I just wrote down some notes here. I'll switch back to them. So BKY has the strongest quarterly percentage movement. BOE, it's broken out over that 200-day moving average and did that quite confidently. Looks like EL8, Deep Yellow, and Batterman are quickly following suit. And then the next tier down behind that, we've got NXG, LOT, and PDN. An interesting one that I wouldn't mind asking you, Gary, about if we just stay on this uranium for a second, is AGE. So Alligator Energy, AGE.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
People lag, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So how would you, like, we've seen uranium, you've put into the list two of those top performers that were on the momentum side. If we're running through uranium, this comes up, this kind of chart comes up. What do you look at when you're looking at a leading theme? It's been on the launch pad for a couple of weeks. You want to trade it. When you see something like this, how would you trade and filter through, or what would you look at there?
Yeah. So I wouldn't be trading AGE because it's been a major laggard there as well. So I'd be looking at sort of through those. So I think, look, most of the best traders, talk about trading the leaders there. So, the strongest sort of two names. I think once you see that real strength there, I think you can start to look at sister names there and maybe go through another two. So there's still got, you say, the sector, say, in this case here, roughly 10 stocks there. The strongest two, maybe another two, if they haven't if they're setting up sort of maybe a day or two after the other ones are popped. So if you're like me, maybe you take off, say, if you take off a little bit of a parcel after like 2.5 times your risk, then you can look for another name to add to it, maybe another one that's sort of setting up. It hasn't quite popped there. I did it recently with some of the data center names. I saw those setting up. So I had some next XDC, I had a cruise position in there, traded some of that in the pop. I started looking for the sector and they all started to set up at the same time. So I went into another name, it popped, only small position, and then when I took off selling my NXG, I was able to, I'll go into, there was a third name I thought looked really well setting up. I knew that had a holding in the second name. So they were going to move together in some alignment. So, but yeah, just taking a little bit of risk off some and then putting other. So that's one way I look at it. But there were some other names in that list that weren't trading very well. So I just avoid those there. So yeah, but still trying to probably trade some of the bigger names. I just know that the smaller names, the smaller prices there, I just struggle with that. Personally, I'm more comfortable being in the bigger names, more liquidity, just more recognizable sort of stocks there. I know some people love the small names, but it's just not me. I get uncomfortable in there. I got to be comfortable. And I am sort of trying to get concentrated as well. So that's the other thing too. If I'm going to sort of build up a 10 to 15, 20% position in something, then it's got to be reasonable quality and reasonable liquidity. And yeah, let's sleep at night, as they say.
Yeah, the sleep at night factor, once you're beyond that threshold, it's errors start to creep in. So that's probably a good point to move into the launch pad. You've got the list, you've been following it for years and tracking it and helping you identify sort of those next themes. Was there anything that came out to you this week?
Just a few laggards in the list there. So you just saw some of the names like, I know like, Calcium, which has been a bit of a laggard there, Tabcorp, Qantas as well, sort of pull back and then kind of come in. So they sort of don't really interest me that too much. A few sort of smaller names on the list as well. I thought GDG was one of the first ones on there. I thought just to watch here, just because it has shown strength, been a really strong trend. It's gone sideways for a while here now. So we do have 3 lower highs in place. So that potentially is the 0, 1, 2, 3 on the downside, Chris. So, but the thing I do like here is the volume profile is not, there's been it's been rallying on reasonable solid volume, so it could congest and tighten up, maybe a VCP, and so I would probably just watch this there. Maybe there's a chance that it could congest and tighten up a bit more and maybe come through again, but it's on the watch list as well. Polynovo's been one that's come off quite a bit here, actually. Probably had a pretty healthy correction there, so probably showed a bit of weakness there, really. So a bit of a laggard there. It has sort of started to pop and come through here, but again, it's probably not the sort of stronger name in that sort of sector as well. So bit of a laggard. I probably just want to watch this one here and just see if we don't see some, congestion tightening up here. AEC was another one there. I thought maybe this one might be able to set up another cup and handle. It has gone on a new high here. Sometimes our cup and handles, sometimes they set up just underneath the old high. Sometimes they can just set up just above the old high as well. So you probably want to sort of see how this one sets up here over the longer ball there. So that's just a watch for me as well. Triple T, kind of interesting there. Sort of this rally's been pretty light there. So apart from one sort of good day up here, it's a bit of a lighter move here. So again, probably just want to see how this trades under the high here. It might congest. Maybe it'll set up a cup and handle there. The good news is there, even though it's sort of come back a bit larger correction there, still reasonably uniform. It's not probably too much larger than the previous two corrections. And it has gotten to go back to the high pretty quickly. So those are the two good things we sort of see. I'd just like to see a bit more volume, but maybe we'll see this congest here and maybe set up a cup and handle. So thought that was okay. As I say, mentioned NXT. There was like a little 0, 1, 2, 3 pattern here, a little VCP tighten up under here as well. So that's what I was looking at. So it met one of my trade criteria. So it's had a pretty good, nice volume, a pretty good volume here. And there was an update. There was some news out there. It might have been this day actually, just talking about securing some more contracts here longer term. So just sort of, I think everyone got nervous about what Microsoft was, they're talking about maybe downplaying its data center here. But yeah, I did think there's an opportunity. I was just talking to a mate of mine who works in the energy area, and when I told him that some of the data centers were off 50%, he was quite surprised there because they were forecasting about 3 to 4 times the energy requirements needed over the next 3 or 4 years from data centers. So, so since then we've seen some positivity around that. So I noticed the sector has started to move there. So that's another sector to keep an eye on for me, just because that's a really impulsive move. So we sort of know that when we come off the uranium names, where that impulsive move off the low, that's what we want to sort of see here. So now a few of these names have popped, and Index had a good run here. Probably want to see some of these things sort of cool off there. So just some sort of, there's plenty of we saw plenty of metals rallying here as well, Chris, as well. So even some of the energy names as well have sort of started to set up like 3 or 4 lower highs as well. So some plenty of good basing patterns setting up as well here. So I think it's kind of friendly market here. So hopefully it continues.
Friendly market. We like to hear that. You've covered most of the members' requests on the Launchpad. There was just 2 others that didn't get covered. One was PTR.
Yeah, just it's had a bit of a rally on light volume there. Not really impulsive here so far. So it's look, still sitting under the previous highs there. So you've still got a few lower highs in place there. So that's just a sort of didn't excite me too.
Sitting in the top segment because we're saying the market climbed back, but this one hasn't surpassed its high.
It has had a strong move and then pulled back here. There was another name I saw the other day which did look quite good. I can't sort of
what comes to you? Well, Gary's looking up that one where we're talking about the different thematics and looking beyond the top 200, looking beyond the top 30 list, I should say, into the top 200 and then ranking them to see, well, how strong are the different thematics? And he did mention metals, those that have come up. So in the Launchpad, we saw that there were in the top 200 companies, 14 nickel companies, 20 gold producers. So we're not too amazed by that with how gold's been performing. But 14 nickel miners, And then Uranium had 6 names in the launch pad, but it's already started to progress into momentum as we've seen. And then we're also seeing a fair bit of movement in this diagnostic space, healthcare equipment, radiology, all of those companies with a lot of crossover in that industry. They've been performing well. And is that chart come to you, Gary? EGR, was it? Oh no, I think you might have muted yourself. Something's gone wrong with the audio. So, well, as he's looking at the audio there, EGR interest. Yeah, there you go. That's come back on. So, nice. So EGR, was that the chart that you were looking at and trawling through?
Yeah, there's sort of one that's obviously had that sort of pop there and then, but it has sort of consolidated here as well on sort of volume. So far holding the 50, just a lot of volumes there. So I thought that was kind of more interesting as well. So just again, see that 100 club, Chris, the stocks that have the 100% move, impulsive, good rally there. What I like so far is there hasn't been too much selling here. You get an initial bit of selling pull back here. So the whole thing's congesting. Might need to use up a bit more time here, but that's one that I thought looked kind of interesting to me. So, yeah.
Well, graphite did actually come back into that list on a preferred measure Gary and I were talking about. The graphites were there sort of February, March. I remember trading some of that. And then it started to creep back in the last couple of days on the launch pad. So interesting you are showing EGR as that chart. The very last one on the request was Zip. So we've watched this one a lot.
Yeah.
How's Zip looking now?
Yeah, look, I thought Zip was okay there. Hasn't had the most impulsive rally. I think Square had a pretty average result there and went off a bit. So caused the sort of sector to be a little bit, so there's been a few in that payment space that have had an okay rally there, but it's a few a bit dull here. But look, it looks okay there. It's just not, I know some of the other sort of stocks are looking a little bit more impulsive there. Just if I rate them there, it's just not coming up as on the stronger side there. Where's that probably sit? Probably mid tier in terms of its strength off the lows here. I just don't see it showing super strength there.
Okay. Well, they're the leaders, and something else I want to throw to you is a bit of a question that we wouldn't ask when you haven't had the best performances, but considering you said the last month has been one of your best for a long time, given you've traded for quite a while, we don't need to name the number of years, and you've got many years under your belt for experience and trading, and particularly the last few years, you've been reflecting a lot and building your process and refining and looking back over your past trades, studying from the best. Is there anything you can share with us on your best periods when you've traded the best and what sort of headspace you've been in, or how you've sort of busy life, different focuses, positive mental, good health? Well, how does a good trading month come to be? How do you have one?
Yeah, it's funny. I was in Port Macquarie last weekend, Chris, watching my daughter do her first triathlon, and there was quite a bit of reflection about that to the point where I was sort of thinking that thinking is okay, but too much thinking can be catastrophic in sport and also in trading. There was just a lot of similarities with what I was watching with the triathletes. So obviously, like a lot of, it was my first sort of watching the triathlon, kind of getting a bit involved and talking to some of the athletes there. But there's a big difference between the rookie athletes and the experienced ones. Then you can kind of see them on the course how some people look quite stressed and anxious, and whereas someone who's done quite a few of them is definitely got a lot more relaxed sort of, so you can kind of see the different levels in there. And I thought one of the things I found the most interesting, sort of almost compelling, was that, I spoke about sort of 3 people who did their first Ironman there, and when they sort of thought too much about it, and it's weird because in those races, obviously you sort of come out of the start, the transition period sort of quite difficult. You're riding through big crowds, and then you're riding through difficult phases, technical phases in the race, and then there's like just the straight open road, wide open. So you've sort of got your difficult places in the race and the periods where you think, but all those sort of people who did the first one there, it was when they got out onto the open road, probably the safest place where you think you can kind of relax the most, the easiest part. That was where everyone was like, that's when they think, oh, they all sort of said, oh, I was just over on this barren road here. I was like, what was I thinking entering this thing? I'm bad. That's when the voices started to sort of creep in their heads and they started thinking there. And it's sort of like, I kind of reflect on the last sort of 4 years. I sort of transitioned to a momentum trader. And the first 2 of those years, I was sort of living between Melbourne and Sydney. I had 3 girls doing the HSC. My wife was sort of, so I was just juggling between both. I was coaching a couple of soccer teams at the same time, running my business, trying to trade between. So I had no time to think. I just had to do that period. But I look back at my trading records, I think that's probably 2 of my best years because I wasn't thinking too much. I just had a process I had to follow. I had some discretion there, but not too much thinking there. But the thing with those sort of triathletes there, and what's interesting is that the best triathlon are actually experienced triathletes. So people who have been, it's not in the sort of 25 to sort of 35 age, it's probably the 35 to 45 age. That's because they get mentally strong there. They have to sort of go through a lot of races there. And it's when the mind sort of gets sort of sharpened up. I think that's from a trading perspective there. You sort of, you kind of get mentally hardened, and you sort of get rid of those voices as well. I don't know if you sort of remember that. I think Inky Johnson sort of tells that story about the Cherokee grandfather talking to his grandson about there's 2 wolves inside us. There's the evil wolf who's fighting the good wolf. Sort of the evil's got sort of anger, jealousy, greed, all the inferiority, sort of ego, and I think the good wolf's sort of got humility, kindness, empathy, sort of all the good qualities. But they're fighting each other, and he said, so which one wins? And he said, the one you feed. But I think as a trader, as an athlete, you're going to have those negative and positive voices continually coming in all the time. So you do need to sort of try, you can't really block them out, but you need to sort of just try and feed the positive ones, try and focus on that, try and dull those negative ones out, but just accept those voices there. It's that's just part of the process. That's part of life, is having those voices there. I think you spend too much time on your own, overthinking too much, that we know that's not healthy. But as a trader too, you don't want to be overthinking about your process there. I think you want to bed it down, have it pretty tight, have a little bit of discretion, but not too much there, but really try and take a lot of the thinking process over. Think about your process. Think about the market, use a little bit of your intuition and gut stuff there, but stay within a fairly tight process and don't override it too much. Just have a little bit of discretion now. I think if you get it to that point there, that's probably when you're going to be most successful. Univanny's just trading the VCPs, Kalamaggi's just trading the stocks, and the, relative strength, not 95% above. He's just trading the pubs. So everyone who's really, really good just has a really tight segment. So they're not overthinking about too much. They're really sort of centered, really focused in their domain. So just think that was sort of something that sort of, I found fascinating from 2 point of view, just from, being centered and, but also, I think being, having some experience as well, just, you just got to block those voices out as well. You're going to have, because when you get the hardest thing about trading is probably once you're in a trade, because then you're thinking, I want to take, it's up quite a lot. Should I take my profit, or it's moved against me. I shouldn't have done this trade. You're looking at the old voices are going to be in your head constantly. But if you've got it, your process has narrowed it down, and you're following that really tight, you don't get much discretion in that, then it stops the thinking and, up and down. Oh no, I'm just going to follow my process. I'm just going to follow my process. I'm just going to follow this. I'm going to take off this bit at this bit, take off here, my stops here. That's it. So just that process has just got to lock it down. So you've got to get rid of that, those voices there. The negativity and stuff, which can sort of set in, and second guessing sort of stuff. Just got to take that away. Sort of, is athletes, obviously that, in triathlons there, it might take 10 years.
Yeah.
For those, so the best triathletes to get to that level where they can just, and I saw it actually with my daughter's son. He's done quite a few of them, and he just looked different from most of the other athletes out there. You know, he was quite relaxed. Yeah, sort of seemed quite happy. He's, always talkative. It just looked. You can see some of the athletes who are more experienced, sort of just had a little bit different, aspect there. And obviously, in the head, you've got a plan, process, just got to follow it. Just got to stay relaxed. Just trust the process there, and it's it just made me think that's there's a lot of similarities there between the two havens there, but just that was my little epiphany for the weekend there.
Well, it's a great place to be and a great atmosphere in town, Port, when the Ironman's on. And I hadn't thought about it, but a good place to reflect on your trading and think about feeding the good wolf.
Yeah. It's like, remember that tennis? I remember when I went to the Australian Open there and just seeing the tennis, how close it was, but and the winner's only winning 1 or 2 more points. Oh,
But the data on that is insane.
I know. Yeah. There's there's millions of dollars difference in just being that 1 or 2% better. That's the reality with everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Winning the games, it's just between, I think it was 600th place and first place. It was 2 or 3%.
Yeah.
More games that he'd won. Djokovic. Anyway,
so that's all in here. That's all it is. It's in here. So you got to get this right, and I think it comes from thinking less is and having a really strong process is really important.
well, just an aside on that, a friend of mine coaches the Panthers, not an NRL follower, but I believe that they've had a few titles in the recent years, and it's been since he started coaching them, and he only coaches them on their mental side of things, and it's really, really interesting to hear about the structure of what he talks about and the processes that he talks about. And exactly what you're talking about with the tennis, the difference between the pros is up here. So you and I can have the same process and the trading side of things. But as you're saying, that voice, the bad wolf, comes in when you've got the trade on, and that's where it sort of takes over. Anyway, it's enough to reflect on for the weekend. We say thank you very much, Gary Glover from Novus Capital. And we'll put your model book on the right-hand side here, because those who want to feed the good wolf, that is full of the good wolf and teaching visual memory and understanding those ones. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Chris.